Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. This is the Steel Curtain Network's Dave Schofield coming at you. It's Tuesday night. It's 9:30. Hey, I put a tweet out to say that we were going to be starting later, but hey, we're here. Where else would you rather be? And with me, as always, except when he's not, is my big brother, Rich. Rich, how's it going?
Hey, can you smell what the bros are cooking?
Yeah, that's right. Hey, just so y'all know, we're coming at you on YouTube, Facebook Live. We got through StreamYard. StreamYard's being a little glitchy right now. It appears that our audio is fine. Our video at times might be a little bit glitchy, but you know what? We're just going to roll with it because you don't want to look at us anyway. So this is more about listening than anything else. So. Rich,
Although I don't know, maybe they do because Ryan says let's talk big guys. Well, who better to talk about big guys than
a couple big guys? Yeah, you know what? We're going to touch on some big guys, which is funny because tonight's topic it's our last position group as we've gone through things since the Steelers season ended. We've gone through position group by position group. We looked back at how they built that group last year. We look at what they're going to do going forward. And what's the last we got left? We've got safeties. So, yep, we're doing the safety dance tonight. But
safety dance.
Yes. So like I said, I want to play the song so bad, but then YouTube won't let us. Will flag us for those kind of things. So, luckily we get great music from Jerry Cherry Band that we're allowed to use. So therefore, we don't have to worry about that one to use that stuff. But Rich, there's been a lot since the last time you and I talked. Because we had the show last week, and the Steelers had made some moves, but then more things started happening. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. We had the Patrick Peterson, we had the Nate Herbig, we had the Damontae Kazee, we had the Larry Ogunjobi, didn't we? I'm pretty sure.
No.
Or we didn't have, I can't, my days are all running together. I don't know if we talked about Ogunjobi or not, but things have kept going. We've got linebackers. Because did we have any linebackers last time?
Oh, see, now you're asking me. Everything has been such a blur over the past week with what's going on. It's hard for me to keep track of which day has been which day.
Yeah, and you know what? It's all right. The Steelers added 2 linebackers. I know the second one was on Thursday because I remember when the news came out and where I was. And Spillane was gone, all that other stuff. And they signed 2 linebackers, and they kind of did what I thought would happen. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, it's Miles Jack, $8 million. They need to cut him now." I'm like, no, they don't. The Steelers have no other linebackers. They can't just cut someone without having someone else there. It's going to be like before. The only way that the Steelers are going to cut Miles Jack is if they sign another linebacker. And even just signing another linebacker might not be enough. Well, it took signing 2, which was kind of right. And then it's the whole notion of Miles Jack. It's not that I don't think that the Steelers didn't want him. It's just $8 million, $8 million. And they kind of needed that. So good stuff there. And then there was the signing over the weekend. That was late Saturday night.
Late Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, that was after 11 p.m. Pittsburgh time. I'd actually fallen asleep on the couch and woke up. It was Daniel J. Daniel J. put that in our breaking news channel. And then I didn't see it right away. I woke up and saw, oh man, that was like 20 minutes ago. I better get to writing because there was no way Jeff Hartman was going to be awake to write that article. So yeah, it's not every time that I'm actually available to do a late night article, but the Steelers signed, I'm going to mess his name up because I'm just sure I will, even though I think Brian Anthony Davis seems to have it down pretty good. But Isaac Seumalo is the way I'm going to say it. Seumalo. Yeah, that's the Pro Football Reference.
No, not a U.
Yeah, on Pro Football Reference, they give you a nice pronunciation guide, so I had to click over to that. Seumalo. I'm going to get it down eventually because this is a guy we're going to want to talk about a lot, and hopefully we're talking about for good reasons. as the season goes on, although it's not very often you talk about offensive linemen for good reasons, which that's just kind of how the position goes. I assume you're kind of like me. You weren't overly surprised that the Steelers double dipped at inside linebacker, were you?
No.
Were you surprised that they double dipped at guard?
A little bit.
Yeah. I kind of want to see how this plays out because I felt that James Daniels did a nice job last year. I don't want to think that he has anything in danger. But then you have Herbig, you have Seumalo, you've got James Daniels, and some of these guys, they've played some center, but I don't know that that's really what the Steelers have in mind about that. I just say, let's get them out there and just let them work, through OTAs and then really get into stuff with training camp and just see how it all shakes out. Do you really think they have to say what they're doing right now or feel like we have to know?
No. Yeah. No reason to talk about what the plan is right now. Right now, you're just collecting bodies.
Yeah. And it's interesting because Myrna, Jane, and Bert said Herbig is a backup. You know what? At this time last week, I don't think he was. I really don't. I think he was, him and probably most likely Kevin Dotson was some serious they wanted to have some serious competition again. Last year, Kendrick Green didn't give much competition. I didn't think he would as a guard. I don't think he's a guard. And if the dude can't handle the intangibles of playing center, I don't see it. I don't see how he sticks around this year at all. I mean, he had the frame and the stuff that they looked for in a center, but I just don't think he could do the intangibles, as I like to say. But yeah, I think the Steelers would have been. We were already excited. Another guard. Yeah, this should be better. Nasty Nate, and then they go out and get an even better guard. There's nothing wrong with depth, is there?
No.
Yeah, and I don't know about you. It was on this show. When we talked offensive line. And I said, if the Steelers think they can do next year what they did this year, where the same five started every game and played almost every snap, then they're going to be in trouble. To me, I think they're already working on that pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
just I can tell you one thing over the last week. The Steelers will not be drafting a guard.
Yeah, and see, because that changed my biggest draft crush completely, because I was really hoping that Skoronski would be the guy to fall to the Steelers at 17, and that's a guy that's a tackle but could just as easily play guard. And I'm like, I really like it. But if the Steelers think he's just a guard and isn't going to be a tackle, then I don't know that they could pull the trigger on that. Or maybe they say, you don't get somebody like this very often. Even with all the other guards, we'll get him for now. We'll maybe start him off at tackle and then see how things play out. But to me, the Steelers still need another tackle. The best place to get that is for a backup is bargain free agency, which could even be, their own people's. But honestly, they've kind of already tipped. I mean, they were supposedly in the race for the Orlando Brown thing. I don't know how much they were in the race, or for all it could have been one phone call just to make sure that the guy wasn't going for too cheap, if you know what I mean. But I think you're looking draft for more with when it comes to tackle. Go ahead and read it, Rich.
Cherry. Thank you, Jerry Cherry Band. Steelers smell good with right guard.
Yeah. See, we didn't have Jerry Cherry on just to, see if he could throw the drums in there too. I know it's more guitar, but that's a good one. And then there was one more, because we do want to get on to safety, but this one's getting a little bit closer because today the Pittsburgh Steelers re-signed. When we typed that for the website, we got to make sure we put that hyphen in there. They didn't resign; they re-signed James Pierre, who they did not tender because the Steelers hadn't hit that deadline yet when we had our show last week, that they didn't tender any of their restricted free agents. not James Pierre, not J.C. Hassenauer, and not Steven Sims, because the right of first refusal tender was like 2.67 million. I think it's 2.6 something. I'm pretty sure it was 2.67 million. And I agree with the Steelers. I don't know that any of those players were worth that for one season. So we don't know what Pierre's deal is. We know it's reported as 1 year. You've got to assume that's probably coming in under $2 million, or else the Steelers would have just tendered him. What do you think about James Pierre?
Let's see. You know what? I'm just going to bring up what came up a bunch I saw on the website today. That, hey, look, the guy could spot start here and there, play in certain packages on defense, and is a great special teamer.
Yeah.
If you get him for a good price, why wouldn't you?
And he's a guy that you can work into your secondary. You can get him snaps during the game. If guys are injured, he can fill in and play a full game if you must. But if he's also a guy that he's going to be out there 100% of the snaps game after game, teams are going to try to figure out a way to attack him. So he's a great depth piece, great special teams player, great story, undrafted, no preseason games in 2020 when he was undrafted to prove himself, but yet proved himself enough in training camp to make the 53-man roster. You have to admit, that's got to be hard to do that when there was no game situations for them leading up to that. That's just my opinion. So
I'm going to bring up a comment because I want to address it real quick. George Rice says we need to sign Edmunds. Who cares about Pierre?
That's because we haven't got to our topic yet.
and I'll say this, George, though, Edmunds is still out there, right? But I'm not that worried about Pierre because right now, what's the chance that his salary is going to count in the top 51?
I think it'll count in the top 51. I think
it's going to be at the very. It's
going, yeah. I would not be shocked one bit that if it's a salary benefit contract, which means he actually gets paid a little bit more than what he'll count. What he'll count, not to the degree of Terrell Edmunds, not to that degree, because he doesn't even qualify for that one. But this is just the Steelers already have a couple of guys like this on the roster. I'll give you one example. Let's see. I got to find one quick. Oh, here you go. Anthony Miller. Anthony Miller's salary is $1.08 million. He counts $940K on the salary cap. That's a veteran salary benefit contract. I wouldn't be shocked if it's something around there. Maybe they gave him a little bit more. Maybe they gave him $1.2 million. But still, that's costing like at most. I mean, it's not going to cost anywhere close to really affecting the salary cap. So that is good one. I saw something here because someone said, once again, Mirna, it said Akurafa could release if they draft a tackle. Chooks is a big salary cap hit. You know what? He is, but you're not going to get hardly any savings from releasing him this year because it's a 3-year deal. This is not the year to do it. You would only save not even $3 million, and you would have a $10 million dead money cap hit unless you designated him a June 1st cut, which means you spread it out over 2 years. But still, that's a lot. I don't see the Steelers wanting to do $10 million in dead money. I think he's more of a candidate for a restructure to where they could save a few million there. So, But the Steelers, I've done some salary cap articles this week. Did one yesterday that was how much cap space they had after Larry Ogunjobi. I estimated what I think. I'm going to say his name wrong. Sayamalo. What I think what I think his contract will be, and I actually did it a little bit high. I said what the minimum could be, and then I rounded up a little bit just to be safe. But I did an article today that went over all the money that the Steelers are going to have to pay in coming up. What is it going to be with the draft class if they draft where their picks are right now? How much are they going to need for the last 2 salaries for the practice squad? To take into the season to pay for things. I laid all that out in an article at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. That website still exists. You can go check that out there right now. So, Yeah. So the Steelers, I mean, they still have, I have them as having still $10 million in cap space. Even after we don't have an official report yet of exactly how Sam Mallows breaks down. We just know it's 3 years, $24 million. But they're going to need more than that to go into the season, but they don't have to have it right now. That's the big thing that people forget. They're like, oh, they're going to have all these expenses. They're over the cap. No, they're not. They don't have to pay for those things yet. And a TJ Watt restructure could pay for most of that if they choose to do that. I don't want them to touch Cam Hayward or anything like that. They already did Minka Fitzpatrick because that was the smart one. That was the easy one because he has the most years left. They saved $10 million and it only counts another $3.5 million per year on the salary cap. So that's pretty good. Rich, let's do the safety dance. You ready for it?
We can dance if you want to.
I want to. Now's the time.
Okay.
Last year, the Steelers, it's almost a question, are you in for kind of a repeat? Everyone felt that the Steelers had to draft a safety last year because that was the one thing. The Steelers have 23 starters right now. Even Kevin Colbert said that at a press conference. We have 23, wait, not 23, 23, what am I saying? Maybe if he was counting the specialists. We have 21 starters. He might have counted the specialists. I can't remember. In other words, they had all their starters but a strong safety last year. And they did not get that until the week of the draft, where they signed Edmunds, the beginning of the week of the draft. And then at the very end of the draft, they signed Kazee. So the Steelers didn't touch safety last year. You had Minka Fitzpatrick. They had Miles Killebrew coming back, but he was more of a special teams guy. He was their special teams captain. They had Trey Norwood coming back for a second year, after his rookie 7th round year. Everyone was wondering what they were going to do with strong safety. And then they addressed it late. Right now, do you feel the Steelers are in a similar situation?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah. They signed Kazee. Do you think he's the answer to have two starting safeties?
Could be.
So the question is,
have to be
who plays the strong one?
Sure.
Yeah. I don't. Are you going to answer or not?
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either. I don't know if Minka's happy. Minka's so much better when he's free to roam and do different things. I'm afraid if you don't have someone else who is a strong safety that could also, play some free, you need that complement of someone who can kind of do other things as well. Do you agree?
I do.
Yeah.
I honestly, I still expect to see Edmunds back for the Steelers. I really do.
Yeah, so. I hope so too. I put this in the Slack channel.
Yes,
and I got an agreement from one KT Smith right away. So I instantly knew I was good. Then Shannon White chimes in and says, boy, you guys are right the same line as me. And that is this. The Steelers signed their 2 inside linebackers. I didn't even name them. Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts. When we talked about them earlier, I didn't even say their names. I feel bad for them. Sorry, guys. You deserve to have your name said there. But when you look at the style of those linebackers, neither one of them screams coverage. To me, that signing those guys makes it so much more important to bring back Terrell Edmunds or a player that plays safety in his, similar in style. That's basically, as Vince Williams is calling for, that's your dime linebacker. You could take all your inside linebackers off the field in a big, in obvious passing downs and just go with secondary guys, because if you have someone like a Terrell Edmunds that can come up and be someone that's like that coverage linebacker. What did you think of that when you were talking about it?
Oh, I was right there with you. You said that. I felt like saying something. KT said something. Then Shannon agreed the same way, and I was like, you know what? No reason for me to say anything. I just, because I'd just be right on board. So piling on. It makes sense. It makes sense. This defense right now, in my opinion, is shaping up to be, hey, Terrell Edmunds
is the kind of player that you want to fill out that safety depth chart in order to do the things that you want to do. The only question is it going to be Terrell Edmunds, or is it going to be another safety that plays like Terrell Edmunds? Because when it came to linebacker, a lot of people thought, oh, the Steelers love Robert Spillane. They're going to bring him back. They're going to bring him back. They didn't. I wasn't torn up about them not bringing him back. But if they weren't, you were going to see them sign someone that was a similar style, which I think they kind of did in Holcomb, but I just think that he's I'm not saying they're on the same level ability-wise. I'm just saying a similar style. So
similar style with more athleticism.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not right now. I mean, we're kind of jumping ahead right now. We kind of are into this year. Is there anything more you want to say about last year?
I mean, what's there to say about last year other than the fact we didn't get to see that 3 safety set until late in the year with Kazee being out hurt.
Yes.
But I mean, Minka was Minka, and Terrell Edmunds does all that dirty work that you need a strong safety to do.
Yeah. I mean, the Steelers defense, like I said, they were the number one defense over the second half of the season. Was the second half of the season over one portion towards the end of the season? I can't remember if it's the last 9 games, last 4 games, one of those things. And my goodness, when you look at the pass defense, with the exception of the game against Cincinnati, no other team after the Steelers bye week had over 190 passing yards in a game. Well, net, when you take into account the sacks and everything as well.
Right.
You know, it doesn't mean that a quarterback didn't throw for over 200 yards, but then he got sacked a bunch of times. That was very, very enlightening. And I don't know if people, because of the teams the Steelers were playing, they're like, oh, well, like I like to say, poo-poo Steeler fans, that they didn't think it was impressive enough to really stand out. I think that 3 safety look made a huge difference with the Steelers defense.
It just opened them up scheme-wise to be able to scheme so many different things.
Yeah, and it didn't start right away, because if you think about it, it was the New Orleans game, and Kazee, that was his first game with the Steelers, regular season, and he had to start. Minka was out. He had the appendectomy the day before. So they didn't really get into that 3 safety look with those 3 guys. I don't know how much they did it against Cincinnati. I'd have to go back and look.
No, I don't think they did it much there. It was several games after Kazee was back before you started to see it. And when you first started to see it, I think it started out, you had it for like 3 plays one game.
Yeah.
And then it was a little more and a little more.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they kind of eased into it, but I really like that. I want to see them be able to do that this year. They've just got to get the personnel. So before we get into that anymore, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We'll hear some words from our sponsors, which we actually, now that we are on the Fans First Sports Network, chances are you are going to hear something from a sponsor. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you all notice we've got the Twitter handles at the bottom of the screen for Fans First, for Steel Curtain. They're basically starting from nothing, so we're trying to get more followers and everything. Really excited about this, but we're gonna go ahead and take a break. Stick around, we'll be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steeler fans, we are back. We are doing the safety dance. Or the Steelers are doing the safety dance. Are you doing the safety dance? Steelers are doing the safety dance. Yeah, go ahead. No, with your freezing screen, it looks more like the robot. But but yeah. But for those of you, we said this last week on the show, because I didn't mention anything about Fans First. We got word earlier in the week. I think it was on Tuesday, because we talked about I mentioned on the show that we should be transitioning over. Yes, we had our first podcast go out as part of Fans First Sports Network on the audio side. That first one went out on Saturday morning. We got all the transition going over. So I'm pretty sure it was the homies. It was homies and State of the Steelers were the ones that went out first. But our network, it is what it is. There are some shows that are already established for some of the other podcasts, for ones, like Michigan and Missouri and Ohio State on the college side. We've got some established baseball podcasts, some established hockey podcasts, and we might be adding a lot more hockey podcasts sometime soon. We almost have the entire MLB filled out. If you're a fan of baseball at all, we should be able to have a podcast for you to listen to one way or the other there. We're working on it. So we had to get started and then have to keep moving. So it's hard for me to sit down because I've been working my tuchus off. But here we are, and it's a lot of fun and exciting. So just thought I'd give that update now.
Good thing you have a lot of tuchus.
I have a lot of tuchus so that I can work it off.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Rich, safety. Do you think we like the 3 safety look? We feel like the linebacker situation is setting up more to use more secondary and obvious passing downs and less inside linebackers. What do you think of the Steelers' depth pieces right now? Because to me, if you look at Minkah Fitzpatrick and Damontae Kazee as your 2 safeties, because that's who they have under contract, looking at just those 2, if you had to pick between the 2 of them, I would say Minkah is more of a strong safety. But Minkah needs to play free safety. So
he can do Minkah things.
Yeah. I feel much better with KZ as being one of 3. And I'm not saying, I mean, obviously, Minkah is number 1. People have to understand that. We didn't even talk about him really much in the first half. He's the all-pro. Minkah's number 1. And the players know it. Everyone knows it. But number 2 doesn't have to be a number 2 and a number 3. You can have 2 number 2s and how you're working them around. Is that ultimately what you would like to see?
Yeah. Look, this is another one where, to me, I think it sets up to get 3 guys in the mix and do a little shuffling here and there during the game to get the matchups and the schemes that you want.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of talk about Andy Weidel, if I say his name right, because I can't say names right, as the Steelers' assistant GM and the influence that he has over personnel. And we've already been told that he's going to be the one to do the big board. And obviously, they bring in a couple former Philadelphia Eagles on the line. If you look at what they were doing in Philadelphia up until he left, look at that team last year, because he basically shaped that team. The draft was over and everything else. He was a big part. I mean, he wasn't the only one, but he was a big part of shaping that team. When you look at that Philadelphia Eagles team, the one thing that screamed at me more than anything was their depth. So I kind of feel like that's why the Steelers aren't done at safety. Not only because it just makes sense for how they want to deploy things, is that they're really valuing trying to get depth across the board even more, in my opinion. Have you noticed that?
Yes, I have. And, you got to think about it. Last year, how nice was it when Minkah was out suddenly with the appendectomy? The first thing you thought was, well, at least KZ's back this week.
Yeah.
Boom. He steps in and played pretty well that first game.
Yeah, well, and not only that, there was another game where the Steelers had a very, very depleted secondary. That was early in the season. Do you remember which game that? Do you remember which game that was?
I do not, but I just remember that really, you were looking at Terrell Edmunds leading the secondary.
I mean, was it even? I'm trying to remember. Was it even Edmunds? That's what I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. Or was that the game he was out as well?
It was 1 week he was out, and the next.
No, he was there for that week. He was there for that week. You're right. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But that was against Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
I'm looking up on Pro Football Reference who was listed as the starters for that game. For the starters for that game in the secondary, they actually have five different players listed as the starters in the secondary of that game. Are you ready?
Go.
They were Terrell Edmunds, Trey Norwood, Arthur Millette, James Pierre, and Josh Jackson. That was the secondary that the Steelers had to put on the field against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Terrell Edmunds played 100% of the snaps. Trey Norwood played all but one. James Pierre played all but four. Josh Jackson played 82%. Millette played 56% of the snaps. And remember, Josh Jackson, when the Steelers had started to have the whole issue with safety with the appendectomy, they ended up having to do a swap on the roster, and he got claimed, and he didn't finish the season with the Steelers. And he had to start that game. So it kind of goes to show you that there's going to be games in there that you might need to have some secondary. And when you have guys that can step up in a game like that, I mean, look at where the Steelers were at that point of the season. The Pittsburgh Steelers went into that game. They were 1-4 and going up against Tampa Bay, who was 3-2. And they were missing every starter from their secondary except for Terrell Edmunds. And they held the Buccaneers to 18 points.
Yep.
And Tom Brady, he did pass for 243
not,
yards, but yeah.
Buccaneers were not a fantastic team last year, but boy, going into that game, who thought the Steelers had much of a chance with that depleted secondary?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that was, I mean, they were struggling. That was Kenny Pickett. I mean, remember, he didn't get to finish that game. He didn't finish that game.
Right.
Trubisky had to come in. But that just kind of goes to show the need for your secondary. So that right there, I'm telling you, we talked earlier about James Pierre. That's part of the reason that signing like a James Pierre is important. If you have a game like that you need him to step in for a game, you got him. I feel when it comes back to the safety position, I feel Trey Norwood's the same kind of guy.
Yes.
He's not a guy you want to have out there on the field all the time. He's a guy that you want to use him in one specific way in sub packages. And outside of that, you're asking him to probably do too much. But man, oh man, his snap counts just fell off at the end of the season because of the 3 safety rotation package and everything that they had with Fitzpatrick, Edmunds, and Kazee. Right. So that was very, interesting there to just show that, you have the depth. You call on him at one point where he was a starter and played all but one snap. And then at the end of the year, they really had some better options. So I think depth is important. Miles Killebrew, he's a guy that you can get out there if you absolutely had to, but he's really your special teams guy. So Rich, going forward, how many more safeties do you think the Steelers really, really need for the 2023 season?
1.
You think they're good with 1?
I think they could be good with 1.
Okay. Would you be surprised if they picked up a free agent and drafted a safety?
I would not.
You would not. Okay. So you think that in that case, then you're going to be dealing with some competition. Do you think they draft a safety high? It'd have to be the right guy, right?
Yeah. Well, now you're getting into which is what we ultimately we love to see the Steelers do, and that is, can we really get into best player available?
Yeah.
But then also have to take into account, you got to be thinking about where you sit with guys under contract and things like that. But I mean, they could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not outside the realm of possibility. If they don't sign one in free agency, do you think they have to go draft, or do you think there's still some options out there? I mean, now it seems like there are, but yeah.
Now there are. A lot would depend on what happens between now and the draft.
Yeah, and honestly, the safety market, once again, is not all that strong. Why can't I remember the safety for the Eagles that just left for a 1-year deal that
isn't getting paid all that much?
Yeah, and I'm like, and he was like the top safety guy out there, so I'm like, the market's just not there. The market's just not there for the position right now. So I'm hoping
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
There you go. I knew it was hyphenated. I knew it was a hyphenated last name. So
1 year, $8 million.
And Sherry Richards had it there for us. So
1 year, $8 million.
Yes, which honestly isn't that much. I'll ask you this quick question before we get to our big question. What do you think of a kind of deal that they could offer Edmunds? What would you be willing? How many years would you want?
2 or 3.
Okay. And what would you kind of like that to average out per year?
5 and a half.
No, I was going to say between 4 and 5 would be real nice. Not as much for Edmunds. If it's that low, though, I don't think he's signed that many years. So, correct. To me, I think if you want to keep him longer, you'd have to do that. I wouldn't be shocked to see him back on another 1-year deal. And yeah, but or probably at most 2. I could see 2 years, 9 million, 10 million. Yeah, I could see that. So, but that's just one option.
Sherry said 3 years for 19.
3 years for 19. Let's see, that would be good for Edmunds. And if you say 19, the Steelers have mostly been splitting out their contracts evenly. They did with the offensive linemen and linebackers. In their payout per year. So if you're talking 19, you're talking probably, that would be like probably a $5 million signing bonus. And then with, just above a minimum base salary, he would probably, oh my goodness, you'd be looking at a cap hit that first year of probably under $3 million.
Yeah.
So even if you paid him that much, that's for this year, it wouldn't be so bad. John McComb says 4 years, $20 million. That's $5 million a season. Chances are that would only be probably around a $2 million cap hit for the first year, depending on how they'd structure it. So Rich, I'm going to ask you the big question so we can get rolling to get out of here.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think we're pretty sure that the Steelers are going to want to do their 3 safety set this year. If as long as they have the right people. Where are they going to get that third guy? I think we're pretty set on Damontae Kazee, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Where are they getting the third guy? Are they getting that person? Is he already on the roster? Is it a free agent? Is it a trade? Or is it the draft?
Okay.
Now remember, for everyone else, just to remind you, the rules are we'll bring up everybody's, but not until I type it in the live chat. So hold on to your answers. Go ahead.
All right. It is a free agent. I expect Terrell Edmunds to be back with the Steelers. Okay.
All right. That's what I would probably answer to it. I think a lot of people would answer that. So I'm going to say, maybe something doesn't happen with Edmunds. Maybe it's because they do something in the draft. Maybe that's what they do.
Either they do something in the draft or
no, yeah, I changed my answer.
Or
trade.
Okay.
So
that's fine.
Yeah. So
trade off.
Yeah. All right. So here you go. And boom, it's out there in the live chat. So for those of you that answered too early, come on, Tyler W. You knew better. Okay. Then we'll bring your answers up there. Where it's going to be. So Afton, she says free agent. Now, some people are saying the specific name. I'm probably going to skip over those. Okay. Steel Dog 88 says draft. George, nope, I hit the wrong one. Brian Brown says free agent. State of the Steelers says free agent.
What's up, Daniel J?
Everyone's
wow.
Jumping around. Yep. Reginald Rivers says draft. John McComb says draft. Kyle Smith, it went away. Kyle Smith, man, where'd it go?
There it is.
No, thank you.
There.
He says free agent. Rod Nizer, put it back in here. Yep. Free agent. Tyler W says free agent. George says free agent. Sorry, Tyler, I'm not gonna say names. Mr. Woodside says free agent. Marky D says convert
Marky D. What are you doing?
Convert Trubisky to safety and make it work for that contract. Okay. Gray 103 says free agent. That's what I'm going to say. Thomas Riley says free agent. And I saw what name you put in there earlier, Thomas. And I got you. Tate Boys. Where'd it go? Okay. He says draft. And of course, he has one in particular. I don't know that's where, I wouldn't want that pick at 17. It would really depend on there. Degeneration X says both draft and free agents the best way to go. I just don't know. Someone's going to lose a roster spot. And in that case, for me, it would probably be Trey Norwood, unless somebody else didn't work out with someone else. Sherry Richards says free agent. George Hoover says draft. Claude Bishop says free agent. Ruben Stone says free agent. And for people that just put without having to put names in there with everything, that's what we got. I'm sure some more might be flowing in here. I'd be all right if they did a couple more options because Trey Norwood. You're like, oh, but they have Trey Norwood. He was a 7th round draft pick, and he's played 2 seasons with the Steelers. He's already one of their better 7th round draft picks that they've had. If you paid attention to my articles that I did, that were all the best draft picks by round by Kevin Colbert. And then you all convinced me to keep going. And I did all the ones, the worst ones by round. Today was the 2nd round. Thursday finishes up with the worst 1st round picks that's out there. So believe it or not, Trey Norwood's was actually landed on the list in the 5th spot. I think it was tied for the 5th spot, believe it or not, with Presley Harvin. Because there's a lot of 7th round draft picks for the Steelers that just don't ever play. So the fact that he's contributed for 2 years, that's great. But it's not like the Steelers have to have him around. I think he's good depth. I think it'd be there. Dwayne says free agent. So I like that. So the question is, I'm going to ask you one more question, Rich, just to follow up. And if people want to throw their thoughts, of course, in the live chat, we probably won't bring these up here. Do you think that the Steelers would possibly wait until after the draft to sign another safety? Do you think they would wait that long?
They might if they have their eye on someone they think might sneak to them somewhere in the draft. They might wait to see if that happens and then go out. They could.
Yeah, I think they could too. But I also, like I was just saying about Trey Norwood, there's not really any reason that you're like, oh, we can't move on from this 7th round pick if the Steelers just have too many good players at the position. And I don't think they're moving on from Killebrew because he's, like I said, he's a special teams guy, that just is another safety there. He's a guy that if he could really do it, that he's more in the form of Terrell Edmunds. But I don't think he's as much of as a coverage guy as Terrell Edmunds even. And it's not like Terrell Edmunds is great at coverage that I'm saying that's anyway. So yeah, we'll see what happens with safety. I am fine with the Steelers rolling it back because based on some of the articles and the polls that I did, based on last year, safety was one of the top positions where Steelers fans felt the best about from last year. So if that's one of your top positions that you feel great about from last year, rolling it out again is not a bad thing. I don't see the Steelers. Would you even think that safety was a weakness at all for the Steelers last year?
No.
No, I don't think so either. So if it's not a weakness, if you're going to have one position group, you want to roll it out the same way, I'm good with it being safety. Some people are like, well, what about outside linebacker? Hey, they got the two guys. There's a lot of questions there with the depth. Hey, what about defensive line? I'd prefer them to add another piece still. That's just the way I'm looking at it. The Steelers have already done some things at cornerback. So safety is, out of all those positions, a lot of people felt was the strongest last year, not just on defense, but overall. So am I speaking words that are at least somewhat reasonable?
You're speaking, Dave. You're speaking words of wisdom as always.
Oh yes, I drop nothing but wisdom, which I know coming from my brother is pure sarcasm.
Yes, it is.
But hey, yeah, I talked about it at the beginning of this segment. We've rolled into Fans First Sports Network. Tell you what, the podcasters that we have across all of our affiliates already have just a much better sense of community with each other, because we basically had no contact with other podcasters with where we were before. That's not the case now for those that are doing a lot of things. So, look, already last week on the Curtain Call, we had someone from a Vikings podcast that's part of the network come in and talk about Patrick Peterson, wrong Viking player. Adrian Peterson. This is what happens when we don't start until 9:30. I get too tired and can't keep it straight. But that was funny. So we're hoping to really have some other stuff with you, and that the networking that we can do also can add specifically the Steel Curtain Network. We're also going to be introducing some national NFL shows that you might see them show up occasionally on our podcast feed. Not necessarily on YouTube or anything, but if you're subscribing to our podcast, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or whatever, we have some interesting things coming there. We're trying to get stuff rolling by the draft with a lot of the stuff with the NFL. Right now, our biggest focus is we were also on, like I said, on Major League Baseball with them with opening day coming up. So lots of good things. But of course, the most important thing is the Steel Curtain Network rolls on. We have a new home. We get to keep doing what we're doing. And our lineup, it's been set for a few weeks. We had the Aussies they've moved on a while ago to do their own thing.
I see still supporting them. Marky D's out there in the live chat. Yeah. So miss you, Marky D.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it'll be this show or not. We'll have Marky D back soon, just because we can, and it's fun. And Matty P. You know what? I got to get Matty P on a Stat Geek. I got to do that. That's right up his alley. And of course, some of our guys are helping them out with stuff that they're doing there. But like tomorrow, you'll have Let's Ride. If you haven't checked out the Steel City Insider with Jim Wexel, and I keep forgetting the other guy's name. I feel terrible. But well, that's okay. They don't remember our names either when they talk about that. That's a good show that's been added to our network. Lots of great stuff for you. I have no idea what to expect on the Curtain Call tomorrow night. But if it's at all like last week, it'll be good stuff. Whew. Lots going on, even in the off season.
Going on.
It was so exciting 2 weeks ago to say, hey, this time next week, there's going to be new members of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you know what? From the last time we talked, there are new members of the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's exciting. At any moment, I could look at my phone and realize that there's a new addition to the team that I'm going to have to write about, and it's really exciting. It really is an exciting time. So, Rich, what do you have to say here to close us out tonight?
Hey, close out the night. Sorry, I was the reason for the late start. Actually, no, I wasn't. Well, I was, but I wasn't. Kyle, first varsity baseball game night.
Yeah,
pulled in a W, 14-2.
Woo, 14-2. There you go.
Yep, was Fun to be back into baseball. But I had to hustle home because, got to talk Steelers. It's just a lot of fun. This last week has been a lot of fun just watching what's going on for the Steelers in free agency. It's exciting. I think I saw somebody, I don't remember if it was, I think it was on one of the, over on the website, on one of the articles, somebody was talking about how it was getting exciting for football again.
Yeah.
And I felt the same way. Sure, there's not games going on. Sure, we're a long ways from training camp, and there's still a lot to go on between now and that time. But you know what? There's still a lot to go on between now and that time. That's why we're here every week.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And, like I said, basically we got a countdown going. I mean, what are we, just 5 weeks away from the draft?
I think you're right. I think you're right on there.
About 5 weeks away from the draft. And, what could go on between now and then? There could be a lot. There could be nothing. We don't know, but those 5 weeks are going to give us a better idea of what's going to happen during the draft. And for that, I can't wait.
Can't wait.